Welcome back to Marketing Careers Uncovered. As you might have gathered so far, what we're really trying to do here with the podcast is starting to get a set of really diverse viewpoints and journeys across that whole marketing space to either inspire us to do something new, approach things a little bit differently, or even just find out a little bit more about areas of marketing that you might not have had that much exposure to. So today, I'm going to be spending a little bit of time with Stacey Cockram, and while we'll be receiving some of her wisdom from her career journey to date, we'll also be learning a little bit more about this whole world of public relations. So, Stacey, why don't you just kick us off and tell us a little bit about who you are, what you're doing?
Thanks so much, and thank you for having me. Yes, I am Stacey. I'm an account director at a PR and marketing agency called Aspectus Group. So we're global, but I'm based in the London HQ. I work on the technology team, and that means serving clients from multinational telecoms businesses to high growth startups. I really like the tech for good space, so I'm lucky to work with some really cool ed techs, for example. So really variety, a lot of variety there. So PR, as Dave mentioned, is kind of my bread and butter. So that means traditional media, so getting clients in newspapers or things that we read online. That's sort of what my specialism is, but I work very closely with our digital marketing team because very much of the belief that you need those multi-channel campaigns for maximum output. So day to day, enjoying the project management for clients, spinning lots of plates, and just getting to work with some really innovative businesses. I also run the Aspectus Academy, which is an apprenticeship scheme at Aspectus, and that is for state school leavers in London. And that's all about lowering the barriers of entry to a career in comms. And that has just been an amazing addition to my job, working with lots of inspiring young people.
How did the Aspectus Academy come about? Because that sounds really, really interesting.
Yeah, it actually came about because the PR marketing industry is, decidedly not very diverse. It's very middle class, it's very white. And we were thinking about how we can do a little thing to make a difference, under no kind of illusion that we can change the whole industry with this scheme, but it felt like a really tangible idea. And it's just been fantastic. We get to go into schools, for example. We get to do talks about what PR and marketing is, because a lot of people just don't know. I definitely didn't when I was 18. And so it's really about inspiring them. And it's a lovely way to give back, I think. And that's where it was born from.
Very, very good. So focusing on that whole perception of PR, I think from my perspective, there's still this quite pervasive view out there that, if you want to get into PR, if you're going to be any good in this space, then you have to be highly extrovert, perhaps a bit of a glamorous party person. Yeah, is that true? Or if not, what attracted you to this whole space?
I definitely think there is a little bit of perception of that still. I do work with a lot of extroverted people. I would probably say that I'm an extroverted person. However, you definitely don't need to be to excel in the industry. The best teams are made up of people who are detail orientated, maybe really logical, but also the people who are out there and love public speaking. So, you really need a diverse team in terms of skills to make that happen. I also kind of thought it was a bit like Mad Men when I was coming in, that TV show. It's not like that, but there are, lots of creative and really cool people that I work with. I'll be honest, I didn't really have this job in mind when I started looking for a career. I didn't know it existed. As I said earlier, I was a first generation uni student, and so my parents didn't really know what working in the city was, for example. And so I sort of stumbled across it by Googling jobs to do if you like talking to people. And there you go. That's where the extroverted piece comes out, and PR did come up there. And from there, I researched the industry a little bit more. I managed to get my hands on a copy of PR Week, which is a big industry title. And what I was taken by was how many inspiring women there were working in the industry. And yeah, I loved that. So I was drawn in that way.
What did you end up studying at uni then?
I studied education and English, education as a social science, and then English literature. So while I had, lots of transferable skills, as people always say, um, I my degree doesn't directly relate to my job. And I would say you definitely don't need a degree to do PR, and even marketing. That's what our apprenticeship is all about. You can very much learn on the job. But yeah, I transitioned from university.
What was really encouraging to hear earlier is that you're not doing your public relations work in an island. You're working as part of a broader and alongside the wider digital marketing team. But it'd be interesting to hear from you, why PR is a really, really valuable part of that overall marketing mix, and is there still a perception out there that actually PR is relatively undervalued and quite easy to throw in the bin if you need to go through a cost cutting exercise or are looking for things to chop?
Yeah, it's an interesting point, and we definitely do see that. Unfortunately, a lot of the time when budget cuts happen, PR is sometimes the first thing to go. I think one of the reasons for that is because it's so hard to measure. You might get a piece of coverage in a newspaper, but you don't actually know how many people have read it. You can guess by the circulation, but it's quite hard to measure. So I do think we need to be better at that as an industry. And with things mainly being online these days, we can do that a lot more. But I think it's really proving our worth. But PR is so incredibly valuable. It's really all about building credibility and getting exposure. In terms of the whole marketing mix, it's often the first touch point that people have with a brand. So you might come across a company in an article, and then you might Google the brand. So you have to have good SEO. You then might be targeted by that brand in the LinkedIn ad. And so it's all part of the puzzle. It's also a really great partner for wider marketing campaigns. We, for example, do a lot of reports with our clients. We will do surveys and create shiny press releases and build that into a full report. And that's great, not just from a media point of view, because we're selling in interesting stories and interesting data, but then you can build a landing page, you can put that on LinkedIn, you can, boost posts, and it's all the way it works best is if it works in tandem with marketing, essentially.
Yeah, and I've worked with absolutely great PR people in my career, and actually we've got just as much value from a market research perspective in terms of questioning and asking the market what they think and feel about particular things. Yes,
Exactly.
there's a bit of a press angle there, but actually in terms of informing some of our propositions and what we take to market, what we dial up on, and what we dial down on as well.
Absolutely.
And I've I'd probably say for about 50% of firms I've probably ever worked for, the questions always come up of if we turned off and scrubbed PR from your budget tomorrow, what would happen? And my initial response has always been, well, right now, nothing. Nothing at all. But start to look 6, 12, 24 months down the line, when you're no longer part of that conversation at that brand building level. That's when you start to feel, and it sort of plays into some of that quite inherent intangibility. Whereas it's easier to measure clicks and conversions and sales opportunities. But my viewpoint has always been cut this stuff at your peril. It won't hurt you now, but actually longer term, it certainly will start to have an impact.
Absolutely. And in the agency, we talk a lot about a drumbeat of activity, and it's that, constant activity in the background, little and often. And if you don't have that, you don't have credibility. And like you say, sometimes it's a longer term play, but you will feel the consequences in the end.
interesting to hear about your very first role. What was it? How did you get there? Was it everything you expected?
So I started off as an intern actually at Aspectus Group, and I have been able to grow from there really. It was a much smaller agency when I started, and we've over doubled since that time. And so as an intern, it was very sort of hands-on. What I loved about it was just the energy and the energy of people and agency life. It was also very apparent to me very quickly that this role is all about spinning plates. And so you've got to be super organized. And actually, I loved that sort of organization side of it. So I don't really know what I was expecting. I was just thinking, let's give it a go. It seems like these are a great bunch of people. And you know what? In that sense, I was absolutely right.
I imagine there's very much a lot of, particularly in our world, there's quite a lot of ambiguity to deal with. Sometimes, we don't have all the answers up front, and sometimes actually we don't even have the whole question up front. And there's a lot of sort of feeling things around and working with different people with different perspectives, and finding a way forward there. So that's very much something that I think you have to can be prepared for a little bit. It can take you by surprise if you're expecting a quite formulaic, structured approach to life.
Yeah, absolutely. When you start a career in PR and marketing, a lot of the time you're going to be wearing different hats, or you're at least going to be collaborating with other people who own different channels to you. And so you've got to be really open to that, for sure.
Yeah, and that whole piece of sort of wearing lots of different hats and getting involved in different things was there. It sounds like that was particularly valuable for you in terms of getting that sense of progression and finding out where you want to focus. What else did you find was important as well?
Yeah, definitely. Being a generalist, I think when you begin your career is super important. You've got to learn your craft almost. And so in PR, especially, that is calling journalists, that is writing content, it's generating creative ideas. With PR as well, you do have to be super media savvy. So that's another really valuable skill for progressing in PR, particularly.
What do we mean by that when we say media savvy?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's really about being resilient and making journalists write about you. And that means spinning stories that are interesting. It means persevering. A lot of the time, your clients are going to want to push the same messages. So, how can you recast, retell, and replay that? And you've got to find different journalists to approach, or different things that are going to make them want to write about you. And so, yeah, having that resilience and media savviness is important. And the landscape is changing so much all the time. Back in the day, there was obviously this big chat around online, and that's the reality now. But the media landscape is also getting smaller, which is why other channels are so important. And so you really have to have your finger on the pulse with everything media related.
Well, and frankly, journalists are more stretched than ever as well. This whole romantic notion of a journalist whiling away the days, carefully crafting a well-researched story just doesn't quite bear out in a lot of places now. So
Yeah.
actually, finding a way to make a journalist's life easier, or cutting through, frankly, all
Mm.
the guff they're going to be sent day in day out anyway, is really important too, isn't it?
Absolutely. Journalists get hundreds and hundreds of emails every day from PRs. And so you've got to firstly stand out, but you've also got to make their life easier. Something that we do a lot at Aspectus is what we call newsjacking. So jumping on stories that are in the news. So with a cybersecurity client, for example, if there is a big data leak and I've got a cybersecurity client, I will send a journalist a comment about why that's important, or what that means for the industry, or what that means for the general public, and putting that in their inbox. But it's got to be relevant to them. It's got to be the right journalist. It's got to be timely. So that's also the media savviness that I'm talking about there as well. Journalists and PRs have got to work together. We both need each other, and so you've got to tell stories in the right way.
Yeah, and that whole spinning plates and being really, really fast. It's there are going to be there are long days in this field, isn't there? It's not if you want to pop home early every other day, perhaps it's not always going to be perhaps the space for you. But it's all about going into these things with your eyes open and understanding this is what it's like. This is what I need to do to get ahead.
Yeah, definitely. And there's obviously a work-life balance is so important, and Aspectus has got a great culture on that. There are things like taking core hours and finishing at 4, which you definitely can do within agency life. But like you say, sometimes you have got to be willing to go the extra mile. And if there's a story that is just breaking, like at least flagging it to your team or being solutions focused to make sure that it does get over the line, and all working together so that you can maintain that work-life balance for sure, but the journalists and the clients still end up happy as well.
Yeah, and then there's realities of just being quite organised as well, and project management, right? That's also important in this world.
Most definitely, yeah. Organisation is so key to the job. It's just effective time management essentially, and when a media, say a newsjack comes in, everything else has to be put on pause because there's no point sending a comment that's 5 hours behind schedule. So you've got to pause everything. It doesn't matter if you were writing an article that day. That's got to come first, and then you've got to figure out how you do get to the article, and that's a challenge sometimes, but something that you definitely develop over time as well. When you're starting your career, I think it's really important to be a generalist, as I've said. But then afterwards, I think, it's learning how to hone those skills and what you're good at. For me, it's the project management and the organisation side of things. And I love people management. So I'm a line manager to 3 people. And that means working on their personal development, figuring out what their specialities are. Other people, of course, maybe are creative minds, and that's where they're best placed. Or you could be a content writer. So there are different avenues that you can go down. But I think be a generalist first, and then, hone in on what you're good at.
And how long have you been people managing now?
I've been people managing for line managing about 3 years. Started off with 1 and I have 3.
So I'm always interested in asking this question. Yeah. I've always had the same response so far, and I'm hoping to get something different at some point. When you took that step into people management, how well prepared were you? Did somebody guide you through and go, this is a really good approach to managing people, or have you had to kind of figure and feel it out for yourself as you've gone?
A little bit of both, if I'm honest. So I think some people show an aptitude for being a people manager and some people don't. And I think you definitely have to listen to those people. I was someone who was very keen to do it and naturally had started to do it. When you're working on accounts with people who are maybe entry level, you start to show that little bit of people management. So I was sort of starting to do it, and I felt that it came quite naturally to me. I was very lucky that I have a fantastic line manager myself. So I learned from her in terms of leading by example. I also was armed with a bit of a checklist when I started. This is what their first day should look like. This is what deliverables for this job role typically look like. And then I was able to speak to the person, work with them to develop something that was a bit more personalized. And so those building blocks were there for me. I think I learned really, like I say, from my line manager a lot. But you do sort of feel it out as well. But line managing 3 people, every single one of those people are so different. And so you do have to tailor, absolutely.
And you've got to look after yourself as well, which is always a balancing act. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's a little bit like being a parent sometimes. You've got to look after yourself, but you've got to make sure you're bringing the rest of the family with you.
Yeah. And if you don't look after yourself, then how can you expect to do a good job for the people that you line manage? And I've been there when maybe I haven't been taking the best care of myself, and you do have to take that into consideration.
I'm already getting a sense that you're really, really enjoying your role at Aspectus. But if you had
Yeah.
to pick out some bits and pieces that you're really getting a lot from at the moment, what would they be?
This can be summarized by the fact that as at Aspectus, we have this value that if you want something, you have full permission to run with it. And for me, that manifests in a few different ways. So, for example, I remember one of the most exciting things when I was a couple of years into the job was securing some top tier coverage in Bustle, which is a consumer publication. And I had this idea for a femtech client that I was working on around all the things that Bridgerton, which was new at the time, had got wrong about sex, like biologically speaking. And I was able to come up with that idea, which is a little bit wacky, sell it into the client, completely run with it and get that coverage. And so for me, that was, just so exciting. And the client was thrilled, which was great. So I think that motto, runs through the work that we do, but also I've been super lucky in terms of what I've run with. So I've just come back from living in Madrid in Spain. And from that, I learned how to work remotely, which sounds ridiculous because we all work remotely these days. But I think lots of people are hybrid. And I hated remote working in the pandemic. I really did. When offices were open, I came in 5 days a week. But when I had this opportunity to go to Madrid, I really wanted to grab that. And so I had to learn how to work remotely in a completely new way. I also got to explore the tech landscape out there and connect with freelancers. And so that was an invaluable experience too.
So what did you start doing differently then in terms of learning how to work remotely?
Yeah.
What did you pick out there as being some really good examples?
Yeah, well, relearning, I should say. For me, it's really about the people side of things. As mentioned, you don't have to be an extrovert to work in PR, but I probably am. And so it's about getting that human contact. And so it can be as simple as making sure that you work from a coffee shop for half the day, or making sure that you've scheduled in meetings with your team. That's a huge thing, collaboration with your team remotely. And I think also when you are far apart, you're generally messaging people just to ask them to do things, or they're asking you to do things, or you're checking in on actions. And where is the point where you say, how was your weekend? Or you just chat about nothing, which you do get in the office.
Yeah,
And so
it becomes very transactional, doesn't it, all of a sudden?
yeah, exactly. So it's about realizing that conversations are fine. Chuck in half an hour every now and again to connect with everyone. If it ends up being work related, fine. If you only talk about the trash TV you've watched, also fine. And giving yourself that space without feeling guilty as well. Another thing that I'm just, a high point for me in my career is the Aspectus Academy, which I've mentioned. Real moment was in December last year when Sophie, who is one of our first apprentices, she's absolutely wonderful. I actually line manage her. She won't mind me saying this, but when she first joined, she was painfully shy. And last year, she spoke in front of the whole company about some LinkedIn campaign results that she'd generated with the team. And to just see her be able to do that was incredible. And so that for me was a real high point. And like I say, with Aspectus, that I've been able to run with that scheme and contribute to it. And that was a very rewarding moment.
And that's, when we're talking about people management and development, actually, spending some time with somebody pouring in some of that, some of that coaching and expertise and seeing that at the other end. I can imagine there's not much more things rewarding than that.
No, absolutely. I was getting choked up. It was lovely, a really lovely experience. And she's thriving, and I know she'll do brilliant things for years to come.
Anything as you've gone that you didn't quite expect to be getting involved in, or things that you wish you'd kind of done a little bit differently? Yeah, hindsight being a wonderful thing in this game.
Indeed, hindsight is a wonderful thing. And look, it's super important to constantly be reflecting on what you've done. So yeah, there are things I'd approach differently. One big thing for me is I was always super focused on progressing my career, and I still am. But there was a time when I thought that meant I had to do absolutely everything for myself. And that is really how you burn out if you're just pushing too hard and trying to do everything. It is just not sustainable. So what I would approach differently and like to do now is it's just, collaborating with team and realizing that there are different people across the business that have different strengths. Asking questions is by no means a failure. In fact, it's essential. And so I thought that if there was a report that I was working on, I had to do the draft, write it, edit it, pitch it out, everything. But really, there are some people who are fantastic content writers, probably better than me or slightly better at analysing data. And by doing it all, I'm actually not being the most efficient, and the client isn't getting the best, the best result. And that never, in terms of clients getting good results, they always did. But in terms of, me burning out, that was really something that I had to come to terms with. And since then, collaboration is, it's just the best thing, and asking questions all the time.
Yeah, and even benefiting from someone going, actually, have you thought about this? Or I was looking at that and I noticed, something that you might not have picked up on.
Yeah, and I kind of thought wrongly that if someone said to me, oh, have you thought about this? That they were maybe saying, oh, that's wrong, or you shouldn't have done that. But actually what they're saying is, let's collaborate and get the best result. And it's not a criticism, it's just how the job works. And if you realize that, then it will be, your life will be so much better.
You do have to have a little voice in the back of your head when somebody's doing that to remind you that they're not criticizing your work, they're being additive here.
Exactly. It's not personal. But also from a multi-channel point of view and the marketing mix, as mentioned, PR is my bread and butter. But more and more, I have learnt how to have that multi-channel approach. I don't think I did that enough at the start, though. I think I was very focused on those media results, which is important when you're starting out. But yeah, you have to join the dots for marketing as a whole. And also going back to that point around not needing to know everything or asking questions. I don't know exactly what the best SEO strategy is, but there's going to be fantastic people on my team who will. So asking them, bringing them in, so that we can be fully integrated.
Even if your career trajectory is coming in at the PR end of the scale, actually exposing yourself to what do SEO specialists do?
Yeah.
What do strategists get involved in? Other content writers, so as PPC, all these other bits and pieces. Yeah, you might start here, but actually, I think sort of dipping your hand into loads and loads of different elements, seeing actually what does interest me, or even just having an understanding of I don't work in a silo here. I need to make sure it's all part of the same ecosystem. How do I best do that? And you do that by understanding it, don't you?
You've hit the nail on the head. You need to have some basic understanding of how everything works together and be able to talk to people about it on a basic level. But when it comes to those in-depth specialisms, no, you're not going to know everything, but you can't work as one person. You've got to bring the right specialists in.
So taking a bit of a reflective view, what's the biggest success that you're most proud of? And also, going to the complete other end of the spectrum, your biggest, we'll call them learning experiences. I don't like the word failures.
Yes, it's a good one. So I've mentioned the Aspectus Academy quite a lot, our apprenticeship scheme. One thing that I have learned on that is that other people won't be as passionate as the thing. Other people won't be as passionate about the things that you are. And that's fine. Everyone has their own passions and what they want to pursue, but you've got to bring people along on the journey. So that manifests for the Aspectus Academy with constantly talking about it, trying to get in front of employees as much as possible. If the C-suite are primarily protecting the bottom line, or they're thinking about how we can be profitable, that's great. That's their job. That's what they've got to do. So how can I, who's running an apprenticeship scheme, make the point that actually that's a good business decision? What I love about it is inspiring young people, but other people might just be focused on the business side of things, and that's fine. But you've got to bring people along on the journey. I've also mentioned this earlier, but that collaboration piece and realizing that asking questions is a strength, not a weakness, is super important. And that relates to everything. That relates to the passionate piece as well, because if you ask the right questions, then you can work together and find a middle ground.
Brilliant. So you are continuing to move onwards and upwards by the sounds of things. But what's next on you? Do you have a master plan? Where do you want
to? There is no master plan, but my motto in life is don't get stuck. So you could stay, in my opinion, at the same company for 30 years as long as you're still being challenged. That's what's important to me. So I'm continuing to grow at Aspectus right now, which is exciting. But who knows what will happen in the future? I'm really excited by the tech for good space, for example. I get to do that a lot with my clients, which is fabulous. And also I'm very motivated by helping people. So if there's tech that can do that, then great. In terms of people as well, though, just continuing to develop my people management skills is something that I'm very passionate about. And also social mobility is something that's always going to be really important for me and what I want to continue to do in whatever future career. So whether that's through apprentices or other mechanisms. I'm a member of the 93% Club, which is a fantastic foundation that is dedicated to social mobility. So for the 33% of us who are from state schools, as opposed to private schools, making sure that those people have networking opportunities that are given, the training and advice that people in private schools historically do have more than people in state schools. And so that kind of ethos is something that I want to continue to have throughout my career, and also just getting involved with the society more itself. I'm also a fellow of the RSA, which is the Royal Society for Arts. And, those kind of foundations and those groups, they're fantastic. And the people that you meet are like-minded and inspiring. And so whatever career I end up doing, I want to continue to get involved in those types of organizations because I just think they're fantastic.
And for somebody who might have a bit of an eye on potential career in PR, also getting involved in some of these groups is certainly not a bad route in.
Absolutely. Networking can seem really scary or a little bit cringe. And let's be honest, sometimes it is. But if you go into these events and you join these groups thinking, I'm just going to learn something and I'm going to meet new people, then you'll find those connections organically. And so if you are starting out in PR and marketing, it's a fantastic way to do that.
Well, a wonderful piece of advice to wrap us up. Thank you
Thank
ever
you
so
so
much for spending a bit of time with us. Really, really appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a lovely conversation.